Hello, everybody. Ed Rosenberg again, and this afternoon I am talking with Cynthia Stine from where are you now?
Hi.
Hi, I don't even know where you are now. Where you located? We're from Texas, right?
Oh yeah, we're in Dallas.
You're back home, right? But what I meant was you're back from China. That's what I meant.
Yes, I just spent the last slightly over a week in China, and it was an amazing experience. I got to speak to well over 2,000 Chinese Amazon sellers, and it was pretty intense. So I did focus groups, and I just spent the whole week learning about Chinese sellers. It was quite interesting.
Now we always say Chinese counterfeiters. What do they say about us? American counterfeiters?
No, actually, you would find that you would be surprised at how similar the Chinese seller is to like your viewers, right? Very creative, tends to think outside the box, which Amazon doesn't always appreciate. Tends to hedge their bets. They're actually very smart business people, and the good sellers or the ones who are really concerned about really building a business on Amazon, they are not the counterfeiters, and they are just as concerned about the counterfeiters and knockoffs as we are, right? And so they recognize that it's a problem, and it hurts them too. So it's interesting because we tend to look at it and we see the Chinese sellers on our listings that are causing trouble, and we think that they're all like that, and they're not. Some of the biggest companies on Amazon are actually Chinese companies, and they're producing really good products. Like Anchor is an example of this, Anker. I got to see their CEO speak at the same conference that I was at, and they're doing 40 million a month on Amazon. I
Wow.
mean, they're a big seller, right? And they're a good seller. They're clean. They're hardworking, all that stuff. But because there are so many kind of shady sellers, it does, it does make them people think about, oh, well, all the Chinese are like this or that. And they're just as concerned as we are about that. Although I had to laugh because almost every seller I met with had multiple accounts
Hmm.
and things like that. And they were just like, well, of course I do. I mean, some of them have like 10, 15, 20. I don't even know how they keep track of that many. Um, and so that made me laugh because I'm like, oh, yeah.
Right. Where have you seen that before?
Yeah.
Okay, so that you told me how they're similar. How are they different?
Well, I think they're different. Just for one thing, a lot of them, almost all of them, are more private label or they're the manufacturer. So you don't have a lot of them selling, like liquidation or even other people's brands. So they're really trying to build, many of them, a huge majority of them are trying to build their own brand. So that's a big difference. Not to say that we don't do that too, but I would just say if you look at percentages in the room, a lot of them are. Also, the volume of these sellers. So, a lot of your viewers are pretty high volume, but they're atypical, right? If you look at the Amazon seller across the board in the United States, most of them are doing less than a million a year on average, or way less, some of them. Whereas for a Chinese seller, that would be a very small account. Like they'd be embarrassed to tell their friends that they were only doing 100,000 a month. That would be a lot of them are doing multi millions within the first 6 months. So um, they're very high volume. They understand volume. They know how to push product. So that is one thing that I found was really different. I mean, the people I was talking to, the sheer amount of product they were moving was pretty staggering, especially since there's so much that they don't know about our platform, right? So, I mean, or even how they don't even know how to, a lot of them don't know how to set up listings properly, or things like that. And yet they are still just, selling a lot of units. So, I think is how to really do volume. But I will say that they have the same problems that we all do with Amazon in terms of product quality, issues or, complaints from buyers and things like that. So they have the same things bring them down as we do.
Now, I'm a little bit concerned because what would you tell somebody who says, because always, you import from country A, let it be China or India or Africa, you're able to produce it for cheap and you sell it in the United States or in the West. But now that the Chinese are doing it directly, what do they need me for?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. I think that's where it becomes more and more important to build up your own brand. And so, as opposed to trying to sell somebody else's product, but to develop a brand. And I will also say one of the weaknesses of the Chinese seller that I witnessed, again, is just not really understanding the U.S. buyer, right? They're still making some pretty basic mistakes in their listings, in their approach, how they describe their products, or even in product development for the U.S. marketplace. Some of the things they try do not work because they don't understand the U.S. seller. So, I mean, that's definitely an advantage that a U.S. seller has, is that they speak English and they understand their buyer really well. And the same on the UK platform. And so I think that that's something to think about. And then also in product development, again, if you're creating a unique product versus, kind of a me too of somebody else's, you'll have a much better chance of being successful.
It really leveled the playing field, this. Now you're competing against the whole world, not just someone in the next block or next state. You're not competing against the Chinese guy who's going to package it nicer.
Right. And and their margins may be different. Like they may be happier with a smaller margin. This I don't know. I haven't really gotten into a lot of their accounts yet. But yeah, I mean, they're fierce competitors. They're very aggressive as a people. And so in this case, again, your viewers should be just fine because they're also, very good business people and not afraid to be aggressive. I think that the more timid seller is going to get washed away under the Chinese tidal wave.
Wow. And they're all sending it by sea to FBA, correct?
Yes. So, yeah, both on the UK and Europe platforms and in the US. So they're not selling on the China platform.
Right, right, of course. So they're basically just doing, I mean, one advantage, I guess, is we can't really get it out to the marketplace faster because we're getting it from China.
In that sense, we do have that level playing field. But like I said, I think that our understanding of the marketplace, the buyer, English, our ability to market, those are those are the things that are going to really be successful. Like a lot of sellers right now who are doing liquidation or drop shipping or things like that where they're selling other people's brands. I mean, I think that they're going to have to shift over time to where they're developing their own brands. I think that that's just the way that's going to make sense. And so when you have fewer SKUs, it's easier to manage, or fewer brands. Right now, some of my clients here in the U.S., they have thousands and thousands of SKUs, so they're not really able to tweak or finesse individual SKUs, right? But again, if you were just doing one product line or one brand, you can, and you can put the time and attention into it to really make it great, instead of hanging on what somebody else has done. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that.
So Cynthia, you're saying that we can make our listings great again?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Let's make our listings great again. Amazon would like that.
Okay, how could let's talk a little bit about, that took a while there. Tell me a big controversy going on right now. I'm sure you know. I spoke to Leslie about it. You know about that. You were circled in. Sellers are finding out that Amazon is jumping on their own listings, and we're trying to find out where Amazon receives the inventory. And I can tell you, my analysis so far is that it isn't a one-size-fits-all answer. Some people are getting it through Vendor Express. Some people it could be in some cases Amazon is drop shipping from the actual seller's listing. I think there are a variety of factors in place, and which is giving the impression that it's one large problem. I don't think it's going to be one size fits all answer. Do you agree?
I agree. This is really weird because while I have seen this from time to time, where Amazon has started selling, a seller's inventory in the past, it really has usually been some kind of mistake. Like they find a pallet lying around somewhere
Right.
And they're like, oh, well, this must be ours, and they sell it. But that is not that's not what's happening here unless there is just a big fail in the warehouse because there's too many of them. It's not a one here and there
Exactly.
thing.
Exactly.
And so something odd is happening. And then, like you said, some of them, it's really how they're getting the inventory is really different. So all I would say at this point for sellers is to really look and reconcile your shipments, as boring as that is, because that's really the only way you're going to know. And this is how some of our clients discovered it, because they're like, wait a minute, I sent in 1,000 units. Amazon says I have 250. I didn't sell 750, right? So they, they picked up on this discrepancy right away, and then they would notice that Amazon had 750 units all of a sudden. So that case was pretty obvious. But the thing is, you would think, okay, so if we point it out to Amazon, then they'll fix it, right? And it's not happening as fast as it should. So that's been kind of unusual. And so I guess for the time being, all we're saying to sellers is just keep an eye on your shipments. Make sure that when it gets in there that it really is getting notated for you. And then if you have an ASIN that suddenly you see sales kind of nosedive, you think, wait a minute, I'm selling, 50 of these a day, and all of a sudden I'm selling, 5. Go and see what's going on, because if Amazon is selling it against you all of a sudden, make sure they're not actually selling your inventory. Now, the thing is, if they do that for you, you can report it as lost inventory. So if they steal 750 units of your stuff, you can make them pay for it. And so that's the other thing, we're encouraging sellers to do if they find the discrepancies, to file, a claim so that they can at least get their money back one way or the other, either get their money back or their inventory back. And of course, it's no fun to have to compete with Amazon, but at least if you can get your money back, you can go buy something else. So we hope to find out what's actually happening. So I've got some inquiries in.
Now, would you know, like, if I have a listing that's brand registered, so obviously I control the content.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody sends it in, someone else sends it in through Vendor Express or Vendor Central. Because from what I understand is that the vendor now supersedes the seller who had a brand registry item, and then they can control the content.
Technically, yes. So what's happening there is that when you send something through Vendor Express, you're basically Amazon, right? That you have the power of Amazon, you are Amazon. So the question always becomes, how did that vendor get a hold of your product, right? That they're selling it to Amazon now through Vendor Express, because that's the big question. But yes, if they're selling it that way. Now, I have clients who do both, right? So they are the vendor and they're the third-party seller. They just cover their bets that way. But, basically, yes, that's the problem. So any change that Amazon makes to a listing sticks, and it's Amazon, and you have to prove that Amazon is wrong. So like I said, this is where if you're brand registered and this is your product and you're not selling it to anyone else, they technically shouldn't be able to do that.
Right, but I have someone in the group. He's saying that he's brand registered. I'm having trouble saying that. And all of a sudden, like everyone else, Amazon started selling their listings, and the person who sold it to Amazon through Vendor Central changed the description of the listings, and now like his arms are sort of cut off because he can't change it back.
Right. So again, I guess I would try to track it down and try and figure out how this other seller got a hold of your client's merchandise, right? Because that's the first question. How did they do that? If you're the brand owner and you're controlling the channel, so and in that case, if he suspects that it's Amazon who sort of stole his stuff, again, why would they change the listing? So yeah, it's weird. I mean, that would just be a case where we would just try to track it down through the catalog and see if we could get a hold of, like what's going on there. And if you can prove that your version of the listing is correct, they'll put it back. but it gets to be a real pain. I have a client who has to do this like every week because somebody's screwing with his listing.
How about signing in as a customer and say the pictures are wrong, or you don't like that?
Well, okay, so it won't matter to Amazon. They'll want to see a link to a website, the manufacturer's website, or some other site that proves that the listing is as you say it is. So if you own this brand, Cynthia's bath items or whatever, hopefully you also have a website with that, and you have other, other areas, other places on the internet where you're selling that product that you can link to and say, well, wait a minute, if you look at jet.com, if you look at my website, if you look here, you can see this is how it's listed, and this is the brand, which is me, and I own that brand. You can look in the registry, and they should they should then revert it back because they can see every change to the catalog, and they know who's making it. And if you suspect that it's someone who's being malicious, like a competitor, then you can report them as a policy violation.
Okay, so maybe I'll have them reach out to you.
Okay.
Okay, Cynthia, so I appreciate it. Anything else you'd like to add about your Chinese trip, which you picked up? Was Amazon there?
They were not at this conference. So they do put on a conference every year, and I'm hoping I might be able to speak in front of that one. But this, I guess, I didn't really know what to expect, right? Most of what I know about China I see in the movies. And what really impressed me was just how smart they are, how focused they are, how they all help each other to be successful on Amazon. They are a tight-knit group. And I think that that's really important for long-term success. But I still think that we're going to compete against the Chinese, just like we have to compete against everybody else in the world, right? I think what's going to challenge us is to be really innovative as sellers and to really come up with unique products. I think the days of buying, cheap plastic off of Alibaba is going to go away. That's not what I mean by private label. I really mean creating something special and unique. Where I was at in Shenzhen, they're really heavy into electronics there. So you could anything relating to a phone, a computer. It was incredible.
Like iPads, you get like iPads for like $10 or something, right?
Yeah. This laptop that I bought, which I bought in Hong Kong, I got it's like $2,000 more in the United States. It's insane. So I think that there are some things that they're really good at, and so we need to focus on the things that we're really good at. I think that that's the bottom line, which is innovation, creativity, and understanding our buyer.
Right. One thing I would say maybe a little different than you just said, like you were saying, we have to be really unique and really creative. I found, speaking to people and from my experience, it's not so much you don't have to come up with. I think Chad Rubin told me this. You don't have to come up with the latest, um, you know, Kickstarter campaign. You just need a little tiny. You just got to find a little hole in the marketplace, fill that hole, and you have the whole world to sell to.
Right, and I think that's where like I said, really understanding your buyer is something that we have. The Chinese look at us and they don't understand us, and it's probably vice versa. Like just being there, I could tell that we're just very different people, right? And so, but that's an advantage that we have as Americans, is that we do understand our market. And so finding that niche, finding that special product, understanding that one, group that will buy it, that's an advantage that we have. And that's a weakness that they have because they don't really understand it. Their market is so different from ours.
All right, so next time we come to New York, we got to go out for kosher Chinese food, and we'll get everything.
I'll tell you about all the new stuff that I learned to eat while I was over there.
Okay. I really appreciate it, Cynthia, and we'll be talking as always. Thank you so much.
Okay,
You
bye.
will. Bye bye.